The golden carriage rolled through the streets of London as thousands of people lined the roads, their faces filled with excitement and wonder. Prince William sat beside his wife Catherine, both dressed in their finest ceremonial clothes, ready for one of the most important days in British royal history. The morning sun cast a warm glow over the ancient city, and the air buzzed with anticipation that had been building for months. Catherine looked stunning in her elegant ivory gown, designed by Sarah Burton for Alexander McQueen. The dress featured intricate silver thread embroidery and delicate floral motifs that caught the light with every movement of the carriage. Her headpiece, a beautiful silver leaves headpiece also created by Jess Collett and Alexander McQueen, sparkled like diamonds as she waved gracefully to the crowds. William wore his military dress uniform, complete with golden braids and ceremonial medals that told the story of his service to the crown and country. The couple had spent weeks preparing for this moment, working with royal protocol experts to ensure every gesture and movement would be perfect. They practiced their waves, their posture, and even the way they would look at each other during the ceremony. But nothing could have prepared them for the overwhelming emotions they felt as they saw the massive crowds of people who had traveled from all corners of the world just to witness this historic event. Children sat on their parents' shoulders, waving small British flags and cheering as the royal carriage passed by. Elderly people who remembered previous coronations wiped tears from their eyes, knowing they were witnessing history in the making. Tourists from America, Australia, Canada, and dozens of other countries held up their phones and cameras, desperate to capture every second of this magical moment. The carriage itself was a masterpiece of craftsmanship, built over 2 centuries ago and used only for the most special royal occasions. Its golden exterior gleamed in the sunlight, while the interior was lined with the finest silk and velvet. The horses pulling the carriage were magnificent gray stallions, trained specifically for royal ceremonies and completely unafraid of the noise and excitement surrounding them. As they traveled through central London, William and Catherine could see famous landmarks decorated with flags and banners celebrating the occasion. Big Ben stood tall and proud, its clock face showing that they were right on schedule. The London Eye slowly turned in the distance, filled with visitors who had paid extra for the best view of the royal procession. Even the Thames seemed to sparkle more brightly than usual, as if the entire city was putting on its best show for the royal couple. The security operation surrounding the carriage was massive but almost invisible to the watching crowds. Police, officers lined the route every few feet, while others watched from rooftops and hidden positions. The careful planning that had gone into this day was extraordinary, with every possible detail considered and prepared for months in advance. Catherine squeezed William's hand gently as they approached Westminster Abbey, the historic church where British monarchs had been crowned for nearly 1,000 years. She could see the ancient stone walls getting closer, and her heart began to race with excitement and nervousness. This was the moment they had been waiting for, the moment that would change their lives forever and mark the beginning of a new chapter in British royal history. The crowds grew even larger and louder as they neared their destination. People were singing, cheering, and calling out words of support and love for the royal couple. Some had been waiting since before dawn just to get the best spots along the route, and their patience was being rewarded with this incredible spectacle that they would remember for the rest of their lives. William looked at his wife with pride and love, knowing that she had handled all the pressure and attention with perfect grace and dignity. From the moment she had joined the royal family, Catherine had shown herself to be strong, intelligent, and completely dedicated to serving the British people. Today was her moment to shine, and she was doing so beautifully. The sound of church bells began to ring out across London, their ancient bronze voices announcing to the world that the royal couple was approaching the Abbey. The bells had rung for coronations, royal weddings, and other great moments in British history for hundreds of years, and today they were adding their voices to this magnificent celebration. As the golden carriage finally came to a stop outside Westminster Abbey, William and Catherine took a deep breath and prepared to step out into history. They could hear the roar of the crowd, see the flash of thousands of cameras, and feel the weight of the moment settling on their shoulders. This was it, their grand entrance into a new role that would define the rest of their lives and shape the future of the British monarchy for generations to come. The heavy wooden doors of Westminster Abbey swung open, revealing the breathtaking interior that had been transformed into a golden wonderland for the coronation ceremony. William stepped out of the carriage first, his polished black shoes touching the red carpet that had been rolled out specifically for their arrival. He turned immediately to help Catherine, extending his hand with the same gentle courtesy he had shown her since their university days at St. Andrews. Catherine emerged from the carriage like a vision from a fairy tale, her ivory gown flowing gracefully behind her as she took her first steps toward the Abbey. The crowd erupted in cheers so loud that they could be heard blocks away, with people shouting congratulations and words of love in dozens of different languages. She smiled warmly and waved to the thousands of people pressed against the barriers, her natural charm and genuine happiness shining through despite the formal nature of the occasion. The couple walked slowly up the ancient stone steps of the Abbey, their every movement watched by millions of people around the world through television cameras and live streaming. Each step they took was deliberate and measured, following the exact choreography they had rehearsed countless times in the weeks leading up to this day. But despite all their preparation, nothing could diminish the magic and excitement of actually being there in that moment. Inside the Abbey, over 2,000 guests had been seated according to strict royal protocol. World leaders, foreign royalty, celebrities and dignitaries from across the globe had traveled to London specifically to witness this historic ceremony. The Archbishop of Canterbury stood at the altar, wearing his most ornate ceremonial robes and holding the ancient crown that would soon rest on William's head. The interior of Westminster Abbey had been decorated with thousands of fresh flowers, creating a garden-like atmosphere inside the ancient stone walls. White roses, lilies, and other blooms filled every corner, their sweet fragrance mixing with the smell of old wood and centuries of history. Golden banners hung from the high ceilings, and every surface seemed to gleam with polish and care. As William and Catherine walked down the long central aisle, they could see familiar faces in the crowd of guests. Catherine's parents, Michael and Carol Middleton, sat in the front rows with tears of pride in their eyes, hardly able to believe that their daughter was about to become part of the royal family in such a magnificent way. William's father, King Charles, watched with a mixture of pride and nervousness, knowing that he was about to pass on a responsibility that had been in their family for generations. The music that filled the Abbey was absolutely magnificent, performed by some of the world's finest musicians and singers. The organ's deep, rich tones seemed to make the very stones of the building vibrate with emotion, while the choir's voices soared up to the ancient rafters like angels singing from heaven itself. Every note had been carefully chosen to create the perfect atmosphere for this once-in-a-lifetime moment. Catherine's train followed behind her like a river of silk and lace, carried by young pages who had been specially chosen for this honor. The children walked with serious concentration, understanding the importance of their role in this historic ceremony. Their families watched from the congregation with enormous pride, knowing their children would be forever remembered as part of this incredible day. Television cameras captured every angle of their walk down the aisle, broadcasting the images to an estimated 2 billion people around the world. In homes, offices, schools, and public squares from New York to Tokyo, from Sydney to Stockholm, people stopped whatever they were doing to watch this remarkable spectacle unfold. Social media platforms crashed under the weight of millions of people trying to share their excitement and amazement at what they were seeing. The lighting inside the Abbey had been carefully planned to create the most beautiful possible images. Sunlight streamed through the ancient stained glass windows, casting colorful patterns on the stone floors and walls. Additional lighting had been installed to ensure that every detail of William and Catherine's clothing and expressions would be clearly visible to the cameras and the guests. As they approached the altar, William and Catherine could feel the weight of history surrounding them. This same aisle had been walked by countless monarchs over nearly 1,000 years, each one carrying the hopes and dreams of the British people on their shoulders. The stones beneath their feet had witnessed wars and peace, celebrations and sorrows, but today they were witnessing something truly special. The couple paused for a moment at the altar steps, looking into each other's eyes with love and determination. They knew that after today their lives would never be the same again. The privacy and freedom they had enjoyed as a young married couple would be replaced by a lifetime of public service and responsibility. But they also knew they were ready for this challenge, and they would face it together just as they had faced everything else in their relationship. The Archbishop of Canterbury smiled warmly at them both, his kind eyes reflecting the joy and solemnity of the moment. He had performed many important ceremonies in his career, but he knew that this coronation would be remembered as one of the most significant events in modern British history. The ancient words he was about to speak had been said countless times before, but today they would carry special meaning and power. The ceremony began with ancient hymns that had echoed through Westminster Abbey for centuries, their familiar melodies creating a bridge between the past and the present. William and Catherine stood side by side as the Archbishop of Canterbury began the traditional coronation service, his voice carrying clearly through the vast stone space to every corner where guests sat in respectful silence. The weight of 1,000 years of British history seemed to settle over the Abbey like a gentle but powerful presence. Catherine watched as William knelt before the altar, his head bowed in preparation for the most important moment of the ceremony. The St. Edward's crown, made of solid gold and studded with precious gems, caught the light from the stained glass windows as the Archbishop lifted it high above William's head. The crown had been used for coronations since 1661, and its weight represented not just the physical burden of gold and jewels, but the enormous responsibility that came with ruling a nation and serving as head of the Commonwealth. As the crown was placed on William's head, a hush fell over the entire abbey that was so complete it seemed as if time itself had stopped. Even the smallest children in the congregation sensed the importance of this moment and remained perfectly quiet. Outside, the crowds that had been cheering and singing fell silent as word spread that the actual coronation was taking place. Across London, people watching on large screens in public squares held their breath. The moment the crown touched William's head, cannons began firing from the Tower of London, their thunderous booms announcing to all of London and the world that Britain had a new king. The sound rolled across the city like waves, reaching people in their homes, offices, and streets, all of whom stopped what they were doing to acknowledge this historic moment. Church bells began ringing from every corner of the city, creating a symphony of celebration that had not been heard for decades. Catherine felt tears of joy and pride welling up in her eyes as she watched her husband transformed before her eyes from Prince William into King William. She had known this day would come eventually, but seeing it actually happen felt almost magical. The man she had fallen in love with at university, who had proposed to her beside a lake in Kenya, was now the monarch of one of the world's most important nations. The Archbishop then turned to Catherine, holding the beautiful Queen Consort's crown that had been specially created for this occasion. The crown was smaller and more delicate than William's, but no less magnificent, with diamonds and sapphires that sparkled like stars in the Abbey's golden light. Catherine knelt gracefully, her ivory gown spreading around her like the petals of a flower, and bowed her head to receive her own crown. As the Queen Consort's crown was placed on Catherine's head, she felt a surge of emotion that took her breath away. She thought about her journey from a middle-class family in Berkshire to this moment in Westminster Abbey, and she felt overwhelmed by gratitude for all the experiences and people that had brought her to this point. Her parents watched from the front rows with tears streaming down their faces, hardly able to believe that their daughter was now Queen of England. The congregation rose to their feet as one, their voices joining together in God Save the King, the traditional anthem that officially marked the end of the coronation ceremony. The sound of 2,000 voices singing in unison filled the ancient abbey with such power and emotion that many people felt shivers running down their spines. Even people watching on television around the world found themselves standing up in their living rooms and joining in the song. William and Catherine turned to face their subjects for the first time as king and queen, their crowns catching the light and their faces glowing with happiness and determination. The applause that erupted from the congregation was thunderous, echoing off the stone walls and vaulted ceilings of the abbey. Outside, the crowds that had been waiting patiently for hours exploded in celebration, their cheers and singing creating a wall of sound that could be heard for miles. The newly crowned king and queen walked slowly back down the central aisle, but now everything had changed. They were no longer Prince William and Catherine. They were their Majesties King William and Queen Catherine, carrying the hopes and dreams of millions of people on their shoulders. Their steps were steady and confident, showing the world that they were ready for the enormous responsibilities that lay ahead of them. As they passed each row of guests, people bowed and curtsied in acknowledgement of their new status. Foreign dignitaries, celebrities, and world leaders all showed their respect to the new monarchs. The couple acknowledged each gesture with gracious nods and smiles, already beginning to fulfill their role as representatives of the British people to the world. The television cameras followed their every step, broadcasting these historic images to viewers in every corner of the globe. Social media platforms exploded with millions of posts, photos, and videos as people shared their excitement and amazement at what they had just witnessed. Hashtags related to the coronation began trending worldwide within minutes, creating a digital celebration that matched the physical festivities taking place in London. Catherine held her head high, her crown secure and her smile radiant as she walked beside her husband. She knew that millions of young girls around the world were watching her at this moment, seeing that it was possible to rise from ordinary circumstances to extraordinary heights through hard work, dedication, and a little bit of fairy tale magic. She wanted to be an inspiration to all of them, showing that dreams really could come true. The massive wooden doors of Westminster Abbey opened once again, but this time King William and Queen Catherine emerged as the newly crowned monarchs of the United Kingdom. The roar that greeted them was absolutely deafening, a wall of sound, created by thousands upon thousands of people who had waited patiently for hours just to catch a glimpse of this historic moment. The couple paused at the top of the Abbey steps, allowing the photographers and television cameras to capture images that would be remembered for generations to come. The Gold State coach waited for them at the bottom of the steps, even more magnificent than the carriage that had brought them to the Abbey earlier that morning. This incredible vehicle, built in 1762, was reserved only for the most important royal occasions, and its golden exterior gleamed like the sun itself in the bright London daylight. 8 magnificent gray horses stood ready to pull the coach, their harnesses polished to perfection, and their training evident in the calm way they handled the noise and excitement surrounding them. Catherine carefully gathered her gown and train as she prepared to enter the coach, her crown catching the light with every movement. Palace staff members rushed to help arrange her dress and ensure that every detail looked perfect for the journey back to Buckingham Palace. William waited patiently, his own crown sitting securely on his head as he helped his wife navigate the steps of the ornate coach in her elaborate coronation outfit. The route back to Buckingham Palace had been planned to take them through the heart of London, allowing as many people as possible to see the newly crowned king and queen. The procession began slowly, with the Gold State coach moving at a stately pace that would allow everyone along the route to get a good look at the royal couple. Mounted guards in their bright red uniforms rode alongside the coach, their horses stepping in perfect formation, as they had been trained to do for months before this day. As the royal procession moved through the streets of London, the crowds pressed forward against the barriers, everyone desperate to get the best possible view of their new monarchs. Children waved frantically from their perches on their parents' shoulders, while elderly people wiped tears of joy from their eyes as they remembered previous coronations they had witnessed decades earlier. The atmosphere was electric with excitement and pride, creating a celebration unlike anything London had seen in recent memory. Television helicopters circled overhead, capturing aerial footage of the magnificent procession as it wound through the historic streets of the capital city. The images they broadcast showed the true scale of the celebration, with hundreds of thousands of people lining the route from Westminster Abbey to Buckingham Palace. Red, white, and blue decorations hung from every building, lamppost, and window, creating a patriotic display that stretched as far as the eye could see. Inside the Gold State coach, William and Catherine waved continuously to the crowds, their faces glowing with happiness and excitement, despite the physical tiredness that was beginning to set in after hours of ceremony and celebration. They could see British flags waving from every direction, and signs held up by people expressing their love and support for the new royal couple. Some signs were handmade by children, with colorful drawings and messages of congratulations that made both the king and queen smile with genuine warmth. The international media presence was enormous, with news crews from every major television, network, and newspaper in the world positioned at key points along the route. Journalists from countries across the globe provided live commentary in dozens of languages, describing the pageantry and excitement to audiences who were watching history unfold before their eyes. The coronation was being broadcast live to an estimated audience of over 2 billion people, making it one of the most watched events in television history. Street vendors had been selling coronation souvenirs for weeks leading up to the event, and now people could be seen throughout the crowds wearing commemorative t-shirts, hats, and buttons featuring images of William and Catherine. Union Jack face paint was popular among children and adults alike, while many people had dressed in their finest clothes for this once-in-a-lifetime occasion. The atmosphere was like a combination of a royal wedding, a national holiday, and the biggest street party anyone could imagine. As the procession passed famous London landmarks, each location took on special significance in the context of this historic day. When they passed Big Ben, the famous clock tower seemed to stand as a symbol of the continuity and stability that the monarchy represented to the British people. The London Eye provided a perfect vantage point for tourists who had paid premium prices to watch the procession from above, while the Thames reflected the golden coach like a mirror, doubling the magnificence of the spectacle. The security operation surrounding the procession was massive but carefully hidden from public view. Thousands of police officers, both in uniform and plainclothes, were positioned throughout the route, while specialists in counter-terrorism and crowd control monitored every aspect of the event. The planning that had gone into ensuring the safety of the royal couple and the hundreds of thousands of spectators was extraordinary, representing months of coordination between multiple agencies and departments. Catherine found herself thinking about how far she had come from her days as a university student, studying art history at St. Andrews. The shy young woman who had once worried about fitting in with William's aristocratic friends was now Queen of England, waving to crowds of people who saw her as a symbol of hope and continuity. The transformation felt almost surreal, but she knew that she had grown into this role gradually over the years since her engagement to William was announced. The crowd seemed to grow even larger and more enthusiastic as the procession approached Buckingham Palace, with people who had been waiting since dawn finally getting their reward as the golden coach came into view. The excitement was contagious, spreading from person to person until the entire area around the palace was filled with an energy and joy that seemed to make the very air vibrate with celebration. The Gold State coach rolled through the gates of Buckingham Palace as thousands of people gathered in the forecourt and along the mall erupted in the loudest cheers of the entire day. The palace itself looked absolutely magnificent, its facade cleaned and polished until it gleamed like a jewel in the afternoon sunlight. Red, gold, and blue banners hung from every window and balcony, while the royal standard flew proudly from the flagpole, announcing to the world that the monarch was in residence. King William and Queen Catherine stepped down from the golden coach with the same grace and dignity they had shown throughout the entire day, despite the physical and emotional exhaustion that was beginning to show in their eyes. Palace staff members immediately surrounded them, helping to arrange Catherine's elaborate gown and ensuring that both their crowns were sitting perfectly for the photographs that would be taken inside the palace before their balcony appearance. The newly crowned royal couple was escorted into the palace through the grand entrance, past walls lined with portraits of their predecessors who had ruled Britain through centuries of triumph and challenge. The weight of history seemed to follow them through the corridors as they made their way to the private apartments, where they would have a few precious minutes to rest and prepare for the final public appearance of this extraordinary day. In the foyer, blue drawing room, Catherine was helped out of her heavy coronation gown by her personal dressers, who had been waiting with a lighter but equally elegant outfit for the balcony appearance. Every detail had been planned months in advance, from the color and style of her dress to the way her hair would be arranged to best show off her crown. William also changed into a more comfortable military uniform, though he kept his crown on, knowing that the thousands of people waiting outside were eager to see their new king wearing the symbol of his authority. The rest of the royal family had already assembled in the palace, their faces glowing with pride and happiness at the success of the day's ceremonies. Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis had behaved perfectly throughout the long ceremony, and now they were excited about the prospect of appearing on the balcony with their newly crowned parents. The children had been practicing their waves and had been told how important it was to smile and look happy for all the people who had come to celebrate. Outside, the crowd in front of Buckingham Palace had grown to enormous proportions, with people packed together as far as the eye could see down the Mall and into St. James's Park. The atmosphere was festive and joyful, with people singing, chanting, and waving flags while they waited for the moment they had all been hoping for. Street vendors moved through the crowd selling last-minute souvenirs, while police officers and security personnel maintained order with good humor and patience. Television crews had positioned their cameras at every possible angle to capture the balcony appearance, knowing that the images they broadcast would be seen by people all around the world and would become iconic photographs that would be remembered for decades to come. The technical planning that had gone into covering this event was extraordinary, with dozens of cameras, miles of cable, and sophisticated broadcasting equipment that would ensure viewers at home would feel as if they were standing right there, in the crowd. Inside the palace, final preparations were being made for the balcony appearance. The timing had been carefully planned so that the royal family would emerge at exactly the right moment to catch the best light for photographs, while also ensuring that the crowds outside would not have to wait too long in the increasingly warm afternoon sun. Palace officials checked and double-checked every detail, knowing that millions of eyes around the world would be focused on this final moment of the coronation day. The famous balcony of Buckingham Palace had been the stage for countless historic moments over the years, from royal weddings to victory celebrations to jubilee festivities. Today, it would witness another moment that would be remembered forever, as King William and Queen Catherine made their first appearance before their subjects as the newly crowned monarchs of the United Kingdom and the Commonwealth realms. Catherine took one last look at herself in the mirror, adjusting her crown slightly and smoothing down her dress. She felt a mixture of nervousness and excitement that reminded her of her wedding day, but she also felt a deep sense of pride and responsibility for the role she was about to step into fully. She knew that millions of people around the world were looking to her as an example of grace, dignity, and service, and she was determined not to let them down. William stood beside his wife, his own crown catching the light from the palace chandeliers, and took her hand gently in his. They had supported each other through every challenge their relationship had faced, and now they were about to face the biggest challenge of all together. The love and partnership that had sustained them through university, their engagement, their wedding, and their early years of marriage, would now have to carry them through a lifetime of public service and royal duty. The sound of the crowd outside was growing louder and more excited as word spread that the royal family was preparing to make their appearance. Children who had been getting restless during the long wait perked up with renewed energy, while adults checked their cameras and phones to make sure they were ready to capture this historic moment. The anticipation was building to an almost unbearable level, with everyone sensing that they were about to witness something truly special. Palace officials gave the final signal, and the doors leading to the famous balcony were opened. The roar of the crowd outside immediately became much louder, and King William and Queen Catherine could feel their hearts racing with excitement and nervousness as they prepared to step out into history and greet their people for the first time as the crowned monarchs of one of the world's most beloved royal families. The moment King William and Queen Catherine stepped onto the famous balcony of Buckingham Palace, the roar from the crowd below was so loud, it seemed to shake the very foundations of the building. Hundreds of thousands of people stretched out. Before them, as far as the eye could see, a sea of faces, flags, and cameras all focused on this single balcony where history was being made. The newly crowned monarchs paused for a moment, overwhelmed by the magnitude of love and support being shown to them by their people. Catherine smiled and waved with the natural warmth that had made her beloved by people around the world. Her crown sparkling in the afternoon sunlight and her elegant dress flowing gracefully in the gentle breeze. William stood proudly beside her, his military uniform and crown creating a picture of royal dignity that would grace magazine covers and newspaper front pages for weeks to come. Together, they represented the future of the British monarchy, young, vibrant, and ready to serve their nation with dedication and grace. The children joined their parents on the balcony, with Prince George looking serious and grown up as he waved to the crowds, while Princess Charlotte and Prince Louis seemed more interested in the spectacle below them. their faces filled with wonder at the sight of so many people gathered in one place. The family portrait they created together was absolutely perfect, showing the world that the British royal family was in safe hands for generations to come. The crowd below began chanting, "God save the King," and "Long live the Queen," their voices, creating a powerful chorus that echoed off the buildings surrounding the palace and carried across London like a celebration song. People were crying with joy, hugging strangers, and waving their flags with such enthusiasm that the entire area looked like it was covered in a moving tapestry of red, white, and blue. The atmosphere was magical, filled with a sense of unity and national pride that transcended age, background, and social status. Television cameras captured every angle of this historic moment, with close-up shots of the royal family's faces showing their genuine emotion and happiness, while wide shots revealed the incredible scale of the celebration taking place across London. The images being broadcast around the world showed not just a coronation, but a celebration of everything the British monarchy represented: tradition, continuity, service, and hope for the future. Catherine found herself thinking about all the people who had supported her journey to this moment, from her parents who had raised her with strong values and unconditional love, to the palace staff who had helped her learn royal protocol, to the British people who had welcomed her into their hearts when she married William. She felt a deep sense of gratitude and responsibility, knowing that she would spend the rest of her life trying to live up to the trust and affection they had shown her. The balcony appearance lasted for several magical minutes, with the royal family waving, smiling, and acknowledging the crowds who had waited so patiently to see them. Every gesture was captured by photographers and filmed by television crews, creating images that would become part of British history and would be looked at by future generations, trying to understand what this day meant to the people who lived through it. As the sun began to set over London, casting a golden glow over the palace and the celebrating crowds, King William and Queen Catherine took one final look at the sea of people gathered below them. They raised their hands together in a final wave, their crowns catching the last rays of sunlight and creating a moment of such beauty and significance that many people in the crowd felt they would remember it for the rest of their lives. The royal family finally stepped back from the balcony, but the crowd showed no sign of leaving. People continued to celebrate in the streets around Buckingham Palace late into the evening, sharing stories of what they had witnessed, taking photographs with new friends they had made during the long day of waiting, and singing songs that celebrated their new king and queen. The atmosphere remained joyful and peaceful, with a sense of community and shared experience that reminded everyone why the monarchy continued to play such an important role in British life. Social media platforms were flooded with millions of posts, photographs, and videos from the coronation, creating a digital record of this historic day that would preserve the memories and emotions of everyone who had participated in or witnessed the celebration. Hashtags related to the coronation were trending in countries around the world, showing that this had truly been a global event that had captured the imagination of people everywhere. Inside Buckingham Palace, King William and Queen Catherine finally had a few quiet moments together to reflect on the extraordinary day they had just experienced. They had begun the morning as prince and princess, and they were ending it as king and queen, with all the responsibilities and privileges that came with those titles. They held each other close, knowing that their lives had changed forever, but confident that they would face whatever challenges lay ahead together, just as they always had. The coronation of King William and Queen Catherine had been everything the British people had hoped for and more. It had been a perfect blend of ancient tradition and modern celebration, showing the world that the British monarchy remained relevant and beloved in the 21st century. The images of their arrival, their crowning, and their balcony appearance would be remembered as some of the most beautiful and moving moments in recent royal history, inspiring people around the world and ensuring that this day would never be forgotten.